Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to take a look at part 2 of our mixing music analog kind of behind the scenes history. How did we get here over the last 3 years? It's been nearly 3 years since we put the studio together, and I've been going back through some of the old footage. Last week we released part 1, where you saw the very beginning, the first video that was ever on this channel. Before we even got the console, you saw some of the footage of the delivery of the SSL, and then you saw us install it, and my good buddy David S.J. come up from New York, and we passed sound through the board for the first time. We hooked up our first patch bay and some of the things that we did there. So now in part 2, we're going to take even more of a look at the very first days and weeks of having the console and just trying to figure some things out. So in this video, you're going to see a little bit about the patch bays, part 2, how we hook things up, some of our thinking at the time of what we were thinking about how we were going to do things. And boy, has it changed tremendously since then. I mean, things are totally different. It really is a peek behind the curtain of what we were thinking and as we were learning on camera on not only how to install this stuff and some of the gear, but how to use it and how things were positioned in the room and all of that stuff. So again, if you didn't see part 1, click the link in the description box below. And if you find any of these highlights interesting to you and you find this entertaining, leave some comments below and let me know what you think. And then also go back and watch all the videos. All the full-length videos are on there. Just go to the video list and sort by the oldest one first, and you'll be able to see all these videos in its totality. So also keep in mind that a lot of this footage, especially when we talk about the install process, it was all done with just a shotgun mic in the room. The audio isn't the best quality, but you can absolutely hear what's going on. A lot of it was done with the iPhone, and we had air conditioning running and fans running, and we started this in the middle of the summertime, and it was like 100 degrees. So again, I apologize for some of the audio quality in some of these clips, both in last week's video, this week's video, and probably even next week's video, but it's all good enough to where you guys can hear what's going on. But this is a truly behind the scenes look of how we kind of started the studio. So I hope you enjoy part 2. Again, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the video. Okay, so let's explain what you did. Okay, so we got the Fusion working now, or Dave got the Fusion working. So the Fusion, the way we interpreted the instructions, we thought originally we wanted to insert it after the bus compressor on the board, but it doesn't seem like we can do that. It seems like it always, according to the manual, it seems like it has to be before the compressor, and the compressor is the last thing it hits. The compressor on the board is the last thing that it hits before it goes out to the speakers, right? We could not put the Fusion afterwards. We'll look into that. I'll talk with James just to see if we're thinking about that wrong, but we got it working, and all the controls definitely work. So Dave has got, I'll bring over the iPhone and we'll explain at the patch bay exactly what we did, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me get the iPhone out.
On the patch bay right now. On the patch bay right now, this set here is to feed to the mains. Okay.
Right.
So this is where I have the Fusion plugged in, and then this is the insert loop on the mains.
Right.
So I came out the insert loop on the mains into the Fusion.
Yep.
Out of the Fusion back into the insert loop.
Right.
Okay. Then that's feeding the mains out, coming out here, and then the mains are going into the X16 on that pair there.
Right.
So this is the last thing into the X16. That's your print track.
I was going to say that is the print track that goes back into the DAW.
That's the print track, and that's also what's feeding the monitors.
That's right. Now this all feeds the speakers. Yep. Exactly.
So everything ends up right here. So it goes Fusion. Insert point out into Fusion, Fusion out into the insert, and then mains out into the X16.
Right. Okay.
That's not going to change unless we change locations of something.
The only way that would change is if you wanted to move the Fusion to something else, somewhere else in the signal chain.
Yeah,
but
then
that's pretty much going to stay on the master bus. So our master bus, hardware-wise, is the Fusion into the bus compressor on the board. And that gives us there's a compressor, high frequency compressor on the Fusion. There's a shelving EQ, the transformer, the saturation and drive. Then it hits the bus compressor on the board. Then it goes into the DAW. That's the master bus chain.
That's it.
Okay,
that's the master bus.
So that's what we got for now. So now the next thing, what are we going to try to do next now?
Well, I don't know at this point, unless you want to start. I think what we need to do now is we need to do the bus routing. Right. And make sure that that's all working through the patch bay. And then we can maybe start trying to patch one piece of hardware into it and see how that works.
Yeah, we thought we were going to do because we're going to run out of room on the patch bay, so we thought we were going to do the drum bus. Maybe try to get the NG bus compressor into our drum bus.
Yeah, we'll get the NG bus compressor in and see how that goes. And once we got that, then we're about as far as we can go.
We're going to try to get all 8 groups so we can print them back into the DAW for stems, right? Are we going to have cabling for that? Not yet. Okay.
We don't. I mean, we could. We have enough D subs to do it if you want to do that.
Okay. But that's. Well, first priority is we want to get the drum bus chain, the NG bus compressor on the drum bus.
Yep.
And want to be able to print. Well, no, and then from there, then the drum bus, once it's processed, goes directly to the main anyway by using this.
Yes.
That goes to the mix.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then after that, we can try, if there's time, can we get all of these so we can print them?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll see where we're at. And that might be call it a day for now. How do we,
okay, it's alive.
Okay, how do you on the board though take it in or out? Or maybe you can't.
Let's see.
I'm just curious. Not that you want to, but how do you Okay, let's explain on video what you did there. Okay, so now we have the NG bus compressor by Wes Audio is on our drum bus. So we got our drum bus working. We have our bus compressor on the drum bus, right? We did the fusion, now we're on the NG bus compressor. That's going to kind of live on the drum bus for now. So again, Dave's got that wired into the patch bay. Let's show you how that is kind of patched in. So,
you want to show them the back of the patch bay too for a second?
Sure, we can do that. You want to do that first?
Yeah, show them the back of the patch bay.
Okay.
Take them back there. So the way we have the patch bay set up right now.
Where's the patch bay? It's down here on the bottom.
Down here on the bottom.
In blue, right?
Yeah, the way we have the patch bay set up right now is these two sets of D subs.
Let me just move this. Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, these two sets of D subs are the 8 bus send and return, the 8 stereo buses. So there's 16 channels total.
16 mono buses, 8 stereo pairs.
Okay,
right.
so that's those two.
Those are the group channels.
Then this is the mains. These are the mains and the main inserts in and outs.
Right.
Okay. So then this one here is the one that jumps up to the X16. That's the main. That's the feed from the main to the X16 for the print track and the monitors.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So now down on this bank here, this is the first set of inserts for the hardware.
Okay.
So I've got these two. These are 8 pairs. These are eight circuits again. So on the Fusion, I've got 1 and 2 as left and right, in and out.
Yep.
So there's 2 snakes, 1 in, 1 out.
Yep.
And then 3 and 4 are coming over here to the NG bus.
Right. So that's one D sub. That's the D sub down here that has 8 channels in it.
And we
so
still have,
two of those channels are going to the Fusion.
Yeah.
The other 2 channels are going to the NG bus compressor.
And we still have 2 more. Still have 4 more channels that we can use.
We can to the AFEX.
Yeah, to the AFEX.
We can do that to the AFEX.
The
That's just going to. Well, no, the AFEX is only going to go on just kick and snare.
Okay, that would be an insert. Then we would actually need. We would actually need to do the.
This what we're talking about here is for the group channels only.
We're only playing with groups right now because we don't have the D subs for the rest of it yet.
Okay, so if we wanted to say put the Dione on in the Titan on the bass bus, you could do that.
We could do that right now, yes.
Well, we're not going to do that yet. We're gonna wait on that. I think what we're going to do, if we can we do we have the cabling to run the AFEX to the kick snare? So then our drums are taken care of. Our drums are taken care of. Our drum bus is taken care of.
We need to set up an aux loop.
Okay.
So we need 2 more D subs. We do have 2 more D subs now.
Yep.
Just the Planet Waves ones now. So we could set it up now at least to see if it works.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, we could do it. We could absolutely do it. If you want to get the AFEX onto the kick and snare, we could definitely do that. Now we have Now we have 2 more D subs plugged into the back.
Right.
On these last 8 now.
Right.
Now the problem I have with that, like I said, is we're giving up these 6 because that D sub, you know, we're not using it. You know what I mean?
We're only using 2 of the 8 channels inside the D sub.
So I have on the back of that, I have the kick routed to channel 1 on the Aphex, and I have the snare top routed to channel 2 on the Aphex, which is just jumped from this is the actual feed. This is the actual D subs from the board for the kick send and return.
Yep.
And then this is where the Aphex is.
Right.
So you got your kick out to your Aphex in, your Aphex out to your kick in.
Right.
And then the same thing for the snare. Your snare out from the board to the Aphex in.
Right.
The snare out of the Aphex back into the board.
Right.
Simple loop. That's just simple in and out loop this time.
Right. So what's going to happen is we're going to have a second patch bay that's going to sit underneath here. For the rest of the hardware when we get to it. But the good news is, even though that, and it does, one thing I hate about patch bays is that can look confusing. But the good news is, we're not going to be pulling any cables.
No.
If you have dedicated chains, like what we're trying to do, dedicated hardware chains, that's just getting you in and out. But those can stay there. That doesn't ever really have to move. It's a kind of a set it and forget it thing, at least for now.
The way I'm seeing us do this, if we have a second patch bay, is we're going to have the top patch bay is going to be the board inserts and returns. And then the bottom patch bay is going to be all the hardware patching.
Right.
So we're going to be jumping from one patch bay up and down to the other.
Right.
But that way we have like the board all running through one patch bay, all the hardware plugged into the other patch bay. And then it's less confusing that way, and then we'll get it all labeled up. Because right now there's no point labeling it because we're going to pull it all apart.
We're going to pull it all apart anyway. Right.
So, once we get that all set up, there's going to be, because of the nature of D-sub routing, there's going to be a lot of wasted space on those things. There's going to be. There's no way to get around it.
Right.
Like we gave up, just for the main inserts, we gave up a whole bank just for the main.
Unless on the other, you got the D sub that goes in the board, but on the other side, I wonder if they must make like a D sub to XLR pigtail.
Oh, they do, but then you'd have to get a different kind of
patch bay. Right.
If you're going to be using a D sub patch bay, then this is the way it works. Now, if you were going to do a D sub to XLR, then yeah, we could definitely just pick and choose what goes in. And
so does it make sense for the second patch bay to be a D sub to XLR?
It might, yeah, because we could use the D-sub connections for all the hardware and then have the XLR, but you know what the problem with it is, though, is you're not going to get that many connections on it. Because an XLR board isn't going to have as many connections as this does with the D-subs.
Right.
So, yeah, no, let's just stick with it the way it is and deal with the waste.
Just stay with it is.
Yeah, worked out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so we're here now at the end of day 4, and I don't know what you've seen so far because I haven't edited the video yet, but we thought it would be a good idea to just kind of summarize what we've accomplished today in case it's not all clear when I go to edit the video, and then what's the next phase. So for today, we did get a lot done. We really got 6 major things done today. We rewired, we pulled all the cables out of the origin, out of the console, because we had some new D-sub cables that came in that were more appropriate lengths, and we relabeled and repurposed and then rewired the board from scratch and started from step 1 and did some cable management, which I'll show some video of somewhere in the video. Then we got the first, beyond that, the first thing we got done is we got our SSL Fusion patched into the patch bay. Well, first we got our patch bay hooked up, which is down here. You guys will see it on camera here. So it's all kind of permanently patched, sticking with the thought process of dedicated chains for now. So we got the patch bay installed and wired. We got the Fusion going to the patch bay, which is inserted hard patched on the master bus. It's coming before the G-Series bus compressor on the board. We weren't able and not even sure if you could put that Fusion before or after. It looks like you can only put it before. It looks like the bus compressor has to be the last thing the audio hits. But we're still not 100% sure on that, but we think we are. But it sounds great anyway.
Oh, hell yeah.
The thing sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Then we focused really the rest of the hardware on the drum bus first. So we got the NG bus compressor by Wes Audio. That is permanently living on the drum bus, and it sounds great. And we also patched in on the kick and the snare, the Aphex 204, which is an exciter with a big bottom, which we just kind of hard patched on the kick and snare, always on the kick and snare. After that, we got all stereo, all our 8 stereo groups, our 16 mono buses into 8 stereo groups. We got everything figured out and routed. And we're able to now print those stems back into the DAW along with the 2 stereo print track. So that's all taken care of. And then we reconfigured the I/O matrix for the Apollos.
Yep.
And the I/O matrix for Studio One, the DAW right now, and tried to commit to a template that every mix, regardless of the tracks, the channels are all assigned to certain specific elements, and then you bring in your audio and you route it to those elements.
Yep.
And if for some reason we're not using, for example, tom 3, because there's no third tom in that song, the fader just sits down.
Yeah.
It doesn't get used and gets muted or whatever. And then that way, everything on the board from a routing perspective, all the little switches and such to route all the tracks to the busing system is all engaged. Everything stays engaged.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to change the bus routing to the hardware.
Nope.
If we have the Aphex unit is hard patched on the kick and the snare track, so they always have to be the same track.
They always got to be track 1 and 2 because that's where the Aphex is. Yeah. Unless you have a patch bay where you can move hardware around, and we decided, at least for now, that didn't seem to make sense. Plus, usually even in the DAW, whenever we mix, it's for me, track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 through 10 are drums. They're always drums. They've always had been drums in the box. So that's the way we wanted to do it on the board. And trying to take the approach of simplicity and trying to keep it consistent from session to session. The other thing that's going to do, as we gain stage the preamps coming into the board and got some of the switches and the things routed, it'll also help with any kind of recalling, because those things are kind of a set it and forget it kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So the only thing that really moves on the board from session to session are obviously the fader positions and the EQ. Everything else, for the most part, could pretty much stay stagnant.
Yeah, because once you have the gain staging all set up, and that's the other thing is there are so many layers to gain staging on this thing.
There is.
That the audio coming out of the DAW can be adjusted, the gain staging on the board can be adjusted, the gain staging on the buses can be adjusted.
Right.
It's insane how much there is to gain stage. Plus, in the outboard gear, they're all gain staging, all the outboard gear. The other thing that we worked out is how to do parallel compression and effects in the box.
Right.
And send them to dedicated faders on the board to blend into the mix, so that we were trying to figure out if we could do like a Shep's rear bus technique with one of the buses to send everything to an outboard compressor. But what we figured out was, after talking through it for a while, is we can group effects inside the bus and just send that out as a stereo pair to 2 faders on the board and blend in any effects that we're doing, and we can do the same thing with parallel compression.
Right.
So the way we parallel compress all the now, with sending different groups to different parallel compressors, we can do the same thing and then group that to one stereo group in the DAW
called parallel compression,
and then send it to a set of faders to blend in on the board, which is going to simplify greatly a lot of the effects stuff that we've been trying to figure out.
Yeah, the effects stuff was the one kind of sticking point, because we didn't want to have to buy more I/O because of the cost, even though the board is capable of handling it. And I did pick up a Reverb hardware unit that will be here next week to try it, to use, because we have 4 aux sends on the board. So we can use those 4 auxes as effects, reverbs, delays, whatever. But even beyond that, then as we talked through it, we said, well, we can still use a reverb plugin, let's say on a lead vocal. You would create an effects track in the DAW, just like you do now. You would send your lead vocal track to that effects track, and then both of those tracks can go to a group in the DAW, and then that group track comes out to a stereo pair on the board. And then you make your blend in your DAW, how much reverb you want on your vocal, for example, and then you can blend it in here. So it ends up going through the mix bus compressor, because in the end, every single element in the DAW has to be on the board in order to get it processed through the mix bus, the master bus chain, which is the fusion and the mix bus compressor, to print back in. So it really is, as we said, it really is hybrid mixing. It's an analog workflow, but it really is hybrid, because you're still doing a lot of comping, a lot of blending.
Yep.
Not a lot, but you're doing some depending on the session in the box, and you're organizing the session and blending the session in a way to spill it out onto the board.
Yep.
And then you're taking, once it hits the board, it's all analog right through all the way back in, right? So that's a lot. We got a lot done.
Yeah.
I mean, we really did. We figured out a lot, and now we think that we only need.
We need one more D sub cable.
And then we need one more, we know we need another patch bay.
Oh yeah, because we ran out of patch bay
really quickly.
Really fast.
So we had one 96 point patch bay. We're not going to need a full 96 point, but we're going to get one.
Yep.
And that will give us all the patch bay that we need for the immediate, for probably the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, what that's going to let us do is that's going to let us dedicate one patch bay is going to be the I/O to the board. So all the I/O feeds and sends back into the board is going to be one patch bay.
Right.
And then we're going to set all the hardware up in the other patch bay, and then we're just going to jump between the two patch bays to get everything all patched together. And like I said, once we get those chains plugged in, we're not unplugging them.
Yeah, even though there's a bunch of cables down here, that's just to keep everything patched. Our goal for now, because of the limited amount of hardware that we have, and because we're trying to assign hardware to buses in specific channels, to kind of leave it.
Yeah.
I'm sure down the road there'll be a point in time where you may want to put one compressor on a vocal as opposed to another. But you could still do that in the box if you wanted to. So, for example, if you wanted to use a Fairchild compressor, and we don't have one of those in hardware. Well,
We'd like one, though. If anybody has a Fairchild, we'll take it.
But we can still use a Fairchild plugin in the box and not process it with hardware if you wanted to. You can blend it in the box, and as long as the only thing is that when you do that, it's going to be you'll have compression, then it'll hit the EQ on the board.
Yep.
You're not going to go. You can't reverse that unless you use the plugin to EQ it, compress it, and then run it flat on the board if you wanted to.
Which is fine too.
Which is fine too. You know, it really doesn't matter.
But then again, too, at this point too, we do have 4 aux sends that we're going to have 4 auxiliary sends, 4 stereo pairs of auxiliary sends.
Right. Yep.
So we can use one of those. Like, let's just say we wanted to run the bass into the diode,
a certain compressor,
into something, or the LA2A. We could do that through an aux send and then back in.
Yep.
With the patch bay, that's where the patch bay is going to be more mobile. Is assigning the aux sends to different pieces of hardware, because we are planning on dedicating specific hardware to each bus. At this point.
That's what we're going to do. Each bus is going to have the master bus is dedicated hardware. Each of the 8 buses that will have dedicated hardware, and then that's kind of it for now. I mean, if you get more hardware, you can always do that. But we're trying to keep it
under control
and simple. You can have a million possibilities. We can get million. It could be just like one of the things I don't want to get into is kind of like what you do with plugins sometimes, is that you have so many choices that you spend half your time trying to figure out which compressor to use or which EQ to use. I want to, at least for now, we're only going to use dedicated on the buses. We're going to use the SSL channel strip for the in-the-box compression and the EQ, and we're going to use the EQ on the board. And that's really it. And even for the plugins that we installed, I only installed the Universal Audio stuff because I have it, and maybe 1 or 2 other plugins for utility, and that's it. I didn't load a bunch of plugins into the system because I didn't want us to have too many choices. So part of working hybrid and working somewhat analog is limitations, and then that's a good thing. Make the stuff that you have sound great, because we got great stuff here. There's no cheap entry-level pieces here. We have all really good, high-quality stuff. You should be able to use your engineering skills to get the mix. You don't need to have 500 different options.
But one of the things we did learn today too, now that we've got it wired up to the point that we have it, is there are almost unlimited possibilities to this.
For routing,
and so on and so forth. The possibilities are almost limitless of what you can do. But it's what do you want to do with it, and how big do you want it to get? And the idea now is like, hey, listen, at this point, we've got enough. Let's use it.
Yeah, we're big enough right now. The Origin is nice in that, and again, maybe other consoles are this way as well. I don't have any experience with them, but I would assume they are on some level. But the one thing about the Origin that is I like is that from a mixing perspective, and this is, I mean, it's a recording desk, yes, but they really had mixing first and foremost in mind as far as the amount of flexibility you have with the way you can route things in and out. Anything could be routed anywhere, and if you have the right amount of I/O and the right patch bays, you can really do almost anything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And again, I would assume most inline consoles are the same way, and that so there isn't. You're not really limited. You're only limited by, like you said, how crazy do you want to get, and how much supporting I/O and patch bays and hardware do you want to patch into this thing. So that's kind of where we are. So I mean, we're up and running, and now once we get the second patch bay in a few weeks, and add the reverb unit and get all the rest of the hardware assigned to the buses, now it's just time to work on it, mix, create a lot more content, and then we'll get a little bit more up close and, you know, higher quality video walking you through the console. A lot of you already in the comments of the first handful of videos that went up on the channel are asking a lot of questions about the origin, specific things that can be done and how it's done. So that's where we'll get a little bit more detailed and show you things up close.
Yeah. We want to get it running first.
Yeah,
and then,
and really understand that before I can show it to you. I want to understand how does this all work so you really get it. And then we just spend the next 6 months on it mixing and just working on lots of different sessions.
Yep.
You know, going from one session to another and making sure, does our template hold true? Are there a couple of different templates? Maybe there are. Maybe there's a better way to route the matrix. We don't know. We think we got it, but until you do a bunch of mixes on it, you just don't know.
Yeah. At this point, this is all speculative.
Yeah.
At this point, like we're looking at it from the point of view of people that have been mixing in the box for a long time.
Right.
And like, okay, this kind of makes sense to do it this way right now.
Right.
But you never know, 6 months from now, we may have this thing completely redone again.
Yeah, we
don't know.
We don't know until you start working through it a bunch.
But I thought we both feel that we've got it in a really good place right now.
Yeah.
And like I said, one more D-sub cable and another patch bay to get everything routed in properly, and that whole rack is going to be integrated into it then.
Integrated in,
and we'll be running with it.
We'll be rocking and rolling, and that's when all the mixing videos will start to come out, the demonstrations and showing you things. And
A/B comparisons to in the box and out of the box.
Yeah.
That's the big one I know of. That's the one I want to do.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll go through each piece of gear and demo it and make it its own video so you can see each piece of gear and how it works. We'll do all of that. Eventually, we will do the same session where we mix it all this way and then bring that same session and go back into the box and just do all plugins and do A/B. Just, you know, not that one's better or worse, just what are the differences.
Yep.
And that will help us learn and be able to teach everybody where does the analog really hold up above the digital, and where does the digital so close that it's, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's why hybrid, it's the mixture of both worlds. And who knows, we may find that, hey, you know what? One of these pieces we really don't need. It can go because we got a plugin that is just as good. There's no reason to have that. Use that and get something else to do the thing that the plugin can't do. So for me, the hardware, the whole goal around having the different select pieces is getting the stuff that the plugins just aren't up to the challenge yet. Or a specific piece of hardware where there's no plugin that currently does that.
Yeah. And also to a place where a plugin, we just can't route it that way.
Right. And then maybe either then the plugin will have to suffice, or the hardware will, depending on what the situation is. But to me, that's all sitting down and learning and doing lots of mixes on it. And the more you work on it, the more you're going to figure out what works, what doesn't work, just like you do when you mix in the box. What plugins work, what doesn't work, what techniques work, what techniques don't work as well. And it's a totally different thing. And then we will go over because there's already questions about recall and some of the concerns that a lot of people have about the recall. And there is. It's not a recallable board. There is no recall on this board.
Yeah.
So if you want to recall a board, you can do it. I have a couple of different apps I've been playing with, so you could do it through an app. You don't have to write down the settings. There's other ways to capture the session and then to bring it back up to life if you had to. What's involved in that? And where does it make sense? Where doesn't it make sense? But the one thing that I've learned in the half a day that I spent down here working on it is how quickly you could get a sound on this thing.
Yep.
That I feel like the mixing process is going to be so much faster than what it was in the box, that any time that you have to spend recalling it, even if it was 30 minutes to recall a session, over, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when you look at the total time it takes you to mix something versus mix faster and recall, I still think it's going to be a time saver. Yeah, it's going to be a pain, but some of it we might be able to reduce. And I got to learn that. You know, I just got to learn it as we go. But I don't think it's going to be as bad as...
No.
And also, too...
And honestly, how often?
Well, yeah, well, here's
You
the...
know,
well,
how often do you have to do a mix recall?
Well,
really?
Well, here's the thing. The people that ask that question, and it's a valid question, is that if you had to mix all of this way or all in the box, and you had to make that choice, I get it. If you're someone that's used to working in the box and you're opening up multiple sessions a week, and if you went all analog, that's a problem. Believe me, that's why when I did this, I left my other workstation, right? We talked, at least on the Home Recording Made Easy channel, we talked about that. Everything that I do for Home Recording Made Easy, mixingmadeeasy.net, all the YouTube videos, all the tutorials, and all the courses, that is all still done in the box on a separate workstation. So I have all that recallability, because there are days where I have to open up 4 sessions a day.
Yeah.
But this is a totally separate workflow.
Yeah.
So the stuff that I know that I'm not going to do plug-in demos on this console. I'm going to do it over there in the box, you know. So yes, there is some recall time that's going to be spent, but I think overall, in the end, it's a faster workflow. We know it's, I mean, what we just pulled up even before, and we didn't even EQ anything. We just turned on the Fusion, dialed in a little bit of compression, and went. I mean, the sound was there in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That you don't get in the box. You just don't. You know, you just don't. And so, again, it's not a bad thing or a good thing. That's just a point of fact. And that's, again, part of what we're trying to do on this channel, is to be objective and unbiased about, it's not trying to sell anybody on this, and I'm not trying to sell anybody on in the box. I'm just sharing, and we're just sharing our experience. What do we notice? I know the box really well. I know what it can and can't do, and that'll be interesting to see how this compares to it. That's all.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
So
I mean, it's amazing. Like we hit the play button, and I literally just shoved the faders up. I wasn't even paying attention to it. I just pushed all the faders up, hit the play button, and spent 2 minutes just jiggling the faders around a little bit. And we had a mix. It's, you know, it's not perfect by a long shot.
No, we didn't EQ anything. There was no
Yeah.
compression except what was on a couple of compressors, the Fusion, the G-Bus compressor, and the Drum Bus compressor. And we were like, wow.
Sounds great.
That sounds really great. I don't know how many times I've done that in the box and went, wow, as soon as I do the faders up. It's usually got to put, you know, a litany of plugins across everything, open up every individual window, dial it all in. And once you do that,
Yeah.
but that, console emulation, tape machine plugins, all the things that we would do to set the mix up, that takes an hour, and you know.
Yeah, and in this it took 5 minutes.
And in here, it's all done for you.
Yeah.
So that's some of the differences, you know. But
Yeah.
anyhow,